I'll move the microphone probe first in the R direction. And we see as we get about halfway into the middle, we get a minimum in the microphone response. And as I go to the center, we get a maximum again. I'll go back to the outside edge of the chamber. Now I'll rotate it in the azimuthal angle, starting at 0 degrees. All the way to 90 degrees, and we see that there is no dependence on the azimuthal angle. Continuing on to 180 degrees. And now I'll go back to 0 degrees. So there's no dependence on the angle. And now I will drop the microphone in the Z direction. And we see it's constant until it bottoms out and the probe gets plugged. And we'll go back up to the top of the chamber. The 5th and the 6th mode, the 410 mode and the 120 mode, are the tricky modes to find. So I'm going to change the frequency and look for a peak. And it's right around 2.3 kilohertz. The problem is I can't separate those two modes. It looks like one peak. So how do we solve this problem? How do we separate out the two modes? So now we have the problem of how are we going to separate out modes number 5 and 6, these two degenerate modes whose resonant frequencies are calculated to be within 5 hertz of each other. So with the microphone in my starting position here, I find that the resonant peak is right at about 2.297 kilohertz. If I move the microphone radially inwards, I find that the signal drops down to 0, and it's pretty much what I would expect from mode number 5. So let's move back out here. If I move it in the radial direction, we see that it drops down to a null, and then we get another peak at 45 degrees, another null, and then another peak right at 90 degrees, which again is what I would expect from mode number 5. So let's go back to our starting position. So we don't see any of the behavior that we would expect to see from mode number 6. So the key now is that we've got to suppress this mode in order to pick up the other one. And by suppress, I mean to not excite it. So the only way to do that is to move the driver to another position where we won't excite mode number 5. And my only option for moving the driver is to move the entire chamber left or right, which moves the position of the driver from the edge of the cylinder along the radial direction. So by moving it about halfway, right about here, I've moved the driver position so that it's here instead of here. So now, let's see what happens if we change the frequency. I'm going to go up. And sure enough, I find a new peak at 2.303 kilohertz. So now let's watch what happens as I move the microphone. I'll go in the radial direction, and we find a real node here, a minimum, and now it goes back up to a maximum, which is the behavior I expect from mode number 6. Now if I keep going to the middle, it drops off to 0. And the reason for that is that the node from mode number 5 overpowers it. But really I have now the behavior that I expect from mode number 6. And if I go in the radial direction, here's 45 degrees, and here's 90 degrees. Now the response drops off almost to 0, which again is the behavior that I expect from mode number 6. So what I've done now is I've suppressed mode number 5, and I'm only picking up mode number 6.